Perfect. All right, so if everyone can see the screen, we'll just go ahead and give people a few minutes to get situated on the call. In the meantime, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Hanna. I'm the communications manager at COPA, the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association, and I would like to welcome everyone to today's call, the inaugural COPA Members Connect. We're very excited to have yet another channel to communicate and stay in touch with COPA members all across the country. Today's call, we have a very special guest. Lola Reid Allin is a COPA member and an aviation author. We'll go into more detail when I introduce Lola in a few moments, but I just wanted to welcome everyone to today's call. So, really quickly, our flight plan for today's call. So we're just gonna take a few moments to introduce this new channel about COPA Members Connect, what this channel means for you, our members. We'll go into a few details about the different ways of keeping in touch with the association. We'll provide you with a few updates from COPA, and then we'll probably try to reserve the majority of the time for today's call to hear from our guest and to hear any questions that you might have towards the end. So just briefly and very quickly, COPA Members Connect, we thought of introducing this new channel to our members. This is basically a virtual meetup for members. I know we probably physically cannot just go to a hangar out there in one of the local airports and meet up. This would be nice, but in lieu of that channel, we could always meet up and engage virtually every now and then. So we will be hosting these Member Connect calls frequently throughout the year and host different guests and different speakers throughout. So through this channel, you will be able to hear updates and insights from the organization. So any new updates that we have about the general aviation community, about your membership with the association, and any advocacy updates that we might have in the future. We will also have we will also have a special guest speaker or guest speakers covering a variety of different topics throughout these calls. Our guest speakers will engage you in discussions about their aviation adventures, about any industry technology updates that would be beneficial for you to know about, and any other topics. I will ask members on the call today or people who would be watching the recording later on, if you do have any specific topics that you're interested about, if you have suggestions about guest speakers that you would like to hear from, or if you would like to suggest yourself as a guest speaker in one of the upcoming calls, please do get in touch with us. We'll have our contact information at the end. You can always reach out to us by phone, email, through social media, and other channels. And lastly, last but not least, we also want to take this opportunity of these calls to hear back from you. So this is not just a channel for COPA to share updates or the guest speakers to share stories with you, but we also want to use these calls to hear back from our members if you have any updates, if you have any suggestions, any feedback for the organization. We would also love to hear from you as well. So I did mention phone and email as the most common ways to get in touch with COPA, but I'm going to hand it over to Sharon, who's our Director of Marketing and Communication, to tell us about all the other ways that you can get in touch with COPA.
Thanks, Hannah, and welcome everybody. Very excited to hear from Lola today. She's somebody I've followed for some time now, and I hope you share quite a bit about your newly launched memoir. It's going to be a great read for those of you who haven't read it yet. So what you're seeing on the screen here, it looks like a bunch of information, which it is. It's really for some of our internal purposes, so I won't bore you with the marketing, but we know that pilots go through a journey, and that might be starting off of learning about flying in Canada at an air show, all the way through to joining a membership or community like COPA. And so you'll see on the slides here of I've put us into different buckets of where you would be able to interface with COPA along your flying journey. So maybe you started off within air shows or you follow influencers, and we take every single channel quite seriously. We're a small team, so we can't do everything at full throttle, but we try to optimize every channel as much as possible. And so this new COPA Members Connect community is integral for us to connect with you and to hear your feedback, but to serve as an opportunity to connect, just because it's the first time in history really where you can jump on a Zoom or a Teams call and meet pilots all across the country, and we want to create those bridges for you all. So of course we have getting to know COPA at the beginning, learning about our organization or about becoming a pilot, deciding to join, getting onboarded onto our tool. And the Members Connect will be used as an onboarding system as well, where you'll be able to learn about new programs and initiatives that Hannah and the team put together, taking advantage of your membership, whether that's different benefits that we have. Wink, wink, some are coming that you'll be quite excited about. We also have scholarships and award programs that are exclusive to our members, and an opportunity to find mentors within those spaces for just being involved and applying. And of course, our magazine reports and our member management system. If you have any questions regarding your membership or some of the flying that you do, we have, of course, our membership services team as well as our advocacy team. Jim Ferrier is on the call here. You can see that cool background he has in the back. So throw your questions in the chat, and hopefully you can see that there is a lot of work that we do in the background, and we're looking to offer more and more wherever we can. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sharon, for this update. I'm just going to quickly go through a few other updates from the association before we hand it over to Lola for the remainder of this call. So, just by way of update, the COPA flight winter issue is now out. You will see that if you log into your member profile on the website, you get access to the digital copy of the magazine. We also do have that issue out for shipping, so expect it in your mailbox in the upcoming few days or weeks. So in that article, I'm sorry, in that issue of the magazine, we do have a lot of exciting different articles. You will see that the magazine is shifting its content. As many of you may well know, we have moved the magazine in-house, and we'll be continuing to add more content that is of interest to our members and the readers of COPA Flight. The COPA Scholarship Program is also underway. The deadline for applications is actually next Friday, March 14th, 2025. So if you or anyone you know is interested in applying, we do offer primary training scholarships as well as advanced training ones. And some of those scholarships are exclusive to COPA members. So if you would like to hear more about the scholarship program, you can go to the COPA website. We do have a webinar that we hosted last December if you'd like to get some more detailed information about the scholarships available. Another projects that are underway, we do have the COPA board elections for regional representatives for Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan. The voting for those board positions will be open until the 21st of March. So if you are a member in any of those regions, you would have received an email or a few emails on how to submit the vote. advocacy-related updates, or I should say safety-related, we will continue hosting virtual safety seminars. We had a few that we conducted throughout 2025. The next one will be coming up very soon. Expect more details to come. And the safety seminar will be on VFR, phraseology, and meteorology. In the meantime, while we continue to update the list of upcoming safety seminars, if you do have any topics that you would like to suggest or you would like to see seminars related to, please let us know either here in the chat or by connecting with COPA otherwise. We also wanted to remind you that air show season will be upon us before we know it. So just keeping everyone up to date and keeping everyone excited. We will be hosting member tents at a few air shows this year. And of course, more details will be coming on those air shows and how to sign up to register if you would like to connect with other COPA members in those member-only VIP tents. So I'll just go ahead and leave this slide for a few moments if anyone would like to scan the QR codes for the COPA Scholarship application, as well as the Aviation Academy, which houses all of our safety training content, including the seminars that have been conducted in the past.
Hannah, can I jump in?
Yes, of course.
There's just a question on accessing the chat. I don't know if there's a few people who might be having an issue with that. Is there a suggestion of how to work around it if they're not able to access outside of the Q&A?
Yes, so it depends if which platform you're joining the call from, but at the very top of the screen, if you're joining from a computer, a desktop, or a laptop, at the very top of the screen, you will see the button to join the chat or the Q&A. You can also submit questions through the Q&A. If you're joining from a phone, a smartphone, then you will have to not exit out, but you will have to click on the chat and it'll take you to the chat function, which might not appear on the screen immediately. I do believe you can use the raise your hand function. I was going to go into a bit more details about some house rules for today's call. So we will be having a Q&A session towards the end of the call. If you do have any questions for Lola or for the team at COPA, you can either type it in the chat. If you do see a button to raise your hand virtually on the call, we will be able to let you access or use the microphone and you can ask your questions.
Thanks, Hannah.
All right. Well, perfect. So without any further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for today, Lola Reid Allin. Lola is a former commercial airline transport pilot, a flight examiner, and a Class 1 flight instructor, as well as a scuba dive master, adventurer, and award-winning photographer and author. Her work has appeared in national and international juried exhibits and publications. Lola is an active member in many aviation associations, including COPA, of course, the Women in Aviation International, the 99s International Organization of Women Pilots, the Northern Lights Aero Foundation, among many other associations. Lola's memoir, which we will be hearing an excerpt from today, her memoir is Highway to the Sky, An Aviator's Journey. It is a compelling testament to the power of perseverance and the pursuit of one's dreams, offering inspiration to readers facing similar struggles in their aviation journey. As a member of COPA, Lola was also one of the organizers for the Find Your Wings event in 2023 at the Prince Edward Flying Club, which is COPA Flight 53. That was a career expo that was aimed at introducing girls and young women to careers within the aviation industry. Quoting Lola, she said that you cannot be what you can't see. So this is why we aim to inspire girls and young women to broaden their horizons through dialogue and exposure to aviation-related organizations. So, Lola, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. And we're going to start with a short, say 20, 25-minute PowerPoint presentation that I'll talk about during the slides during the event. And then I'll do a short reading about my very first solo flight.
Lola, while you pull up the presentation, if we do have any questions, I might go ahead and interject if there's any questions from people who are on the call.
Of course, absolutely. All right, so thank you very much, Sharon and Hannah, for inviting me to present today. I'm always thrilled to talk about aviation and encourage others to become pilots or get involved in the aviation industry, not just as pilots. So I've entitled this Highway to the Sky, which of course is mirrors the name of my book, but specifically this is the journey of women in aviation. So when I was a little girl, I grew up in Belleville, Ontario, which is just about 10, maybe 18 kilometers east of CFB Trenton. And even as in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was a very busy airport. So overhead, the house where I lived in, the planes would be flying, specifically the Golden Hawks, which of course was Canada's first aerobatic flying team. It was established in 1959 to celebrate the RCF's 35th anniversary of the Silver Dart. So the Silver Dart was the first heavier flight of the heavier than air aircraft in Canada. And of course, the first one was in 1903. And I remember thinking, fun career this would be. It would be exciting, challenging, rewarding. I wanted to do it. Even more importantly, in 1962, my parents took my sister and me on an epic flight to Regina. Now, it was epic in the sense that in those days, in the 60s, people just didn't hop on airplanes the way we do today and zip down to the Caribbean, let's say for the weekend. In fact, it was such a big event, we couldn't even fly nonstop to Regina. We had to go from Toronto to Winnipeg over for layover, and then Winnipeg to Regina on an even smaller turboprop. And it was a pretty exciting flight. It was late August, early September, and lots of turbulence. And I said to my dad, "Wow, this is so much fun. It's like a ride at the fair. I want to do this when I grow up." And he said, "Don't be silly. Girls don't fly airplanes." And he could have said it a bit more kindly, but in fact, he was right. Very few women did fly airplanes, and certainly almost no female flew commercially. So here's Fern Villeneuve. Here was the first leader of the RCF Golden Hawks. The Golden Hawk here, the F-86 Sabre. A little bit further on, we have Top Gun in the 80s here, 1986, I believe it was. It was all men. The Right Stuff here, Tom Wolfe's book about the Mercury astronaut program was implied, it was implicitly stated that the people that had the right stuff were white men. And here's a picture here of Sam Shepard, one of my heroes, who played Brigadier General Chuck Yeager in the movie The Right Stuff. Now, a later movie of Top Gun did include Monica Barbaro as Phoenix, a nod to the fact that there are now women flying jet fighters. So when I was growing up, though, this was what I had to look forward to: house cleaning, cooking, maybe being a teacher, a medical professional as a nurse, a stewardess, as they were called then, or a legal secretary like my mom. I want to emphasize there's nothing wrong with any of these careers. We like to eat. It's nice to have a clean house. Teachers are invaluable, but we call these forced choice careers. So these careers are the only ones that were really suitable or considered suitable for women. Now, these are deliberately old photos because it showed the era that I grew up in. This is a fairly modern photo. And again, you still see the captain is male, the four stripes here, very attractive blonde flight attendants, a nod here to a person of color, and also to a male steward. But As I mentioned, the first flight was 1903 and 1909 in Canada, and yet why do we see so few female pilots? And when there have been female pilots, the world's first licensed female pilot was Ramon de la Roche, an actress in France, March 8th, 1910. And it would be nice to think that we celebrate International Women's Day, which is officially tomorrow, because of Ramon de la Roche, but in fact, it was due to the end of a labor dispute in America. Harriet Quimby was America's first licensed female pilot and the first woman to fly across the English Channel. Her achievement kind of got swamped because on the same day that she achieved this, in April 1912, another epic event happened, the sinking of the Titanic. A bit closer to home, March 13th, 1928, Elaine Volek became Canada's first licensed female pilot, but only Canada's 77th licensed pilot. So that was 25 years, a quarter century after the first heavier-than-air flight. We have a lot of notable firsts, however. First Canadian woman to earn a degree in electrical engineering was Elizabeth or Elsie McGill. That was in 1927. First woman in the world to earn an aeronautical engineering degree in 1929. Not only that, in her third year of university in 1926 at the University of Toronto, she contracted polio. This here she is in Thunder Bay, which was then Fort William, and she's called the Queen of the Hurricane because of her designs. What made Elsie special was the fact that she had really spectacular role models. Her parents, both her parents were journalists, both her parents were lawyers, and her mother was the first judge in British Columbia. So they encouraged their daughter to be the best she could be, despite the fact that she was crippled by polio. This is a great show here, Breaking Through the Clouds. You can watch it on YouTube. The first women's air derby in 1929, dubbed the Powder Puff Derby, because up until that time, the national air races were only for men. A little bit of trivia. Opal Kuntz was one of the participants. She flew her Beach Travel Air to the event, which started in California, but her plane was considered too fast for a woman to fly. So she had to find a less powerful aircraft, a 200 horsepower aircraft. You can see here, Amelia Earhart was one of the participants. There were 20 people participating. Louise Thaden won the heavy category, and Phoebe only won the light aircraft category. We have a lot of other notables. Marvell Crossan here, featured on the cover of the 99s, was not only the first female bush pilot, but she also participated in that Powder Puff Derby in 1929. However, you notice she also died in 1929 when her airplane crashed. Newspapermen, as well as the event organizers, said not that Marvell Crossan was a bad pilot, but rather that this was prima facie proof that all women were unsuitable to fly aircraft. Of course, there was quite an outrage, and the race continued, obviously, because there were two winners. Later on, soon thereafter, it was found out that Marvell Crossan actually was suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning leaking from her engine. Of course, we all know Amelia Earhart, the first woman to fly solo west to east, that is from America to England across the Atlantic Ocean. And she was also the first female to fly as a passenger across the ocean. My personal hero, Beryl Markham, first person and therefore the first woman to fly solo east to west, that is from England over to North America, landing in Canada, and several books by and about these pilots. I've got a lot of other females who were really important. Amy Johnson, these are solo flights. Amy Johnson flew solo from England to Australia, the first woman. Florence Pancho Barnes formed the first stunt pilot union for the movies in California. Lady Mary Heath in 1929 was the first British woman to get her commercial pilot's license. And then she came to America and got her aircraft maintenance engineer license, and being the first woman. Bessie Coleman in 1921 became the first licensed Black female pilot. They wouldn't train her in America, so she had to get on a boat and travel to France, where she got her license. Elizabeth Gardner and Maggie G were two of about 1,100 World War II WASPs, women Air Force service personnel. Louise Thaden, as I mentioned, she won the 1929 air race. In 1936, the men and women joined together racing in that National Air Derby. So guess who won? Louise Thaden. Jean Batten, in the same year, in 1936, was the first woman to fly solo from England to New Zealand. Catherine Stinson was the youngest female pilot in America in 1912. And then Helen Rishi here in 1934 was the first woman to to fly commercially in America. And Jackie Cochran in 1953 broke the sound barrier. Closer to home again, Marion Orr was a wartime ferry pilot, instructor, and airport operator. Look at all her stuff here. Private pilot license at the year the war started, a commercial pilot's license, served with the Air Transport Auxiliary, first Canadian woman licensed to operate an airport and flying school in Maple, which is now closed, first Canadian woman licensed to fly helicopters, and she's in the Aviation Hall of Fame and awarded the Order of Canada. Her best friend, Vi Milstead Warren, same career trajectory. Notice here she flew 47 aircraft types in 643 hours, then went to Nickel Belt Airways in Sudbury with her husband. We have a short video here.
Flying as a vocation is in a class by itself. It affords satisfactions, intangible ones, available in no other line of work, and after the hangar doors are closed, fellowships of the finest and most enduring kind. I seem to be blessed with a temperament which has enabled me to delight in the challenges of flight, to love its freedom, its self-sufficiency, its splendid loneliness, to marvel at the awesome beauty of skyscapes.
Jerry Mock was the first woman to fly around the world, 29 days, 1964. And when she landed here in Saudi Arabia, the men, of course, there were only men at the airport, they were absolutely astonished that there was no one on board the plane except Jerry. But to their credit, they gave her a standing ovation. They called her the flying housewife. And while it was true that she was married and had 3 children, she'd also studied engineering at university. So when I started flying, I found this in a flying magazine issued from 1968. I didn't start flying till 1979, but this was at the airport in Chatham. And it's a little bit of a nod here to the flying housewife. Another personal hero, Rosella Bjornsson, was first at just about anything. The first female jet pilot in Canada, first female officer on a twin-engine jet, first female captain, first female member of COPA, and maybe not so surprisingly, the first Canadian pilot to take maternity leave. She was inducted into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. And of course, what made her a little different in getting her license here at 1964 at age 17 was her dad. And he actually taught her to fly at age 12 so that in the event that anything happened to him, Rosella could take over. So as Rosella said, your life may not work the way you expect it to. So we want to embrace those detours. And how do we do that? We choose a positive attitude, we set specific goals, we embrace the detours or call them opportunities for different careers. Be resilient, keep your focus, be persistent, and don't let others change your mind or influence you. Elizabeth Wieben is another example of detours and a family-run air charter business in Superior Airways. So they were her parents were her role models. She earned her private and commercial license during high school. That's pretty amazing. She was a bush pilot in Canada, an outback pilot in Australia, and a DC-3 co-pilot in the US, but only as long as she wasn't seen or heard by passengers. She and her husband returned to Canada in 1979, and she established Wieben Air in Thunder Bay, and then in 88 was hired by Confederation College to establish, coordinate, and teach women into trades and technology programs. She retired, but continued to teach flying in Thunder Bay. So Amelia Earhart says the most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity. And when you take that first step, you may not know it. You've just set yourself on a new course, but your fears have become paper tigers. It's difficult to be what you can't see. So that's why I like doing these outreach presentations. So for example, at no time during my first few flight lessons did I think this will be my next career. Everyone I knew who was a pilot, was a man. And in fact, at the very first lesson, every time I went to the airport, everyone there was male, including my husband and our 3-year-old son. But I then learned after getting my medical that most major air carriers required 20/20 or maybe 20/30 uncorrected vision. And as you can see, that doesn't apply to me. I realized I'd never fly with a major air carrier, but I continued flight training. 1 year later, I was a commercial pilot, then a flight instructor. Within 3 years, I became a Class 1 supervising instructor and the first female chief flying instructor at Vanderhoof, which after I accepted the position, I looked on a map and realized it was on the same latitude as the center of Hudson's Bay. But it was a great experience. I got lots of mountain time. And then later at the Waterloo Wellington Flight Center. So because I wanted to keep all my options open, I enrolled at university and kept studying in aviation, became a multi-engine instrument rated pilot, and then eventually after 1,500 hours became an airline transport pilot, and then also got my float plane. Despite all this, I couldn't imagine that in 2 years I'd be flying Twin Otters for the Ontario government in the subarctic. And then a few years later, worked at de Havilland Flight Safety as a first female employee and first female flight training and ground school instructor. A few years ago, a friend of mine, Robin Hadfield, who is the International 99's president, said, "Hey, Lola, did you know your name is on the Women in Aviation History Bushplane Museum in Sault Ste. Marie?" And actually, I didn't know they had a museum there. So it was during COVID. So my husband and I went up to see it. And this is the wall here. And notice they say passion and persistence. Just like anything, you have to have a passion for what you're going to do, what you want to do, and you have to have persistence. Until you spread your wings, you will have no idea how far you can fly. And if you don't try, you've already failed. And perhaps even more importantly, as Wayne Gretzky says, I missed 100% of the goals I don't take. So while I was thinking about my future, I learned to scuba dive. Later, I broke up with the same boyfriend and moved to the Mayan Riviera to become a professional diver. While I was there, my next career morphed from the dive shop owner's suggestion I should present lectures. These were the first 4 groups of lectures that I presented to travelers to the Mayan Riviera. And the lecture series were pivotal because people liked what I had to say, but they also liked my photographs. So I've been published in many magazines, which I'm sure you will recognize. And I became a published author. I started off as a niche publication in Mundo Maya, writing about the Maya. I then moved into travel magazines, Verge magazine, and here in the Globe and Mail. Do you like to sleep alone? A question I was asked in my overnight with the Maasai in Kenya. And then I also wrote a 5-part article for Skies magazine. This is here, me in Whitehorse after dog sledding. I got my mushing certificate. And Judy Cameron, Air Canada's first female pilot, hired in 1978. And then Porter Airlines, 12% of their pilots are female, which is great. And then over here, Highway to the Sky, my recently released memoir by Simon & Schuster. And then in this month's COPA magazine, 2 Left Feet, an adapted article, or an article adapted from my taxiing chapter in the memoir. So we have a gender gap for major world airlines. Interestingly enough, the first 4 here are countries that start with I: India, Iceland, and Ireland. So Air India has the highest percentage of female airline pilots. KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines, the lowest percent, Air Canada, 6.6, and they average 4.7%. I just want to point out that to understand this, there's no way that Iceland has more pilots, for example, than Qantas or United, but percentage-wise, they have a higher percentage. What's the reason? A lot of it is perception. People still perceive that women aren't quite as capable. And in fact, one reason I wrote the book was I understand that women are still getting this type of question. Didn't you just borrow that jacket, even though it has the stripes on? I'm afraid I can't fly or I don't have time to serve you a drink. I have to fly the plane. No, I have no idea what we're serving for lunch today. In the military, in 1980, the RCF decided to run what is called the Swinter Trials, service women in non-traditional enrolls non-traditional environments and roles to decide if women were capable military aircrew. So here's my good friend Nora Bottomley, and she was in the first all-female flight crew of Air Transport Command. She had actually earned her private pilot license at a civilian airport, and had been employed or working with the military since about 1972. But in 1980, Dee Brasseur, Canada's first female jet pilot, Nora Bottomley, and Leah Mosher became part of the Swinter trials. Also in the military, Maurice Carmichael was the first female snowbird pilot, first female snowbird leader, and she inspired Captain Sarah Dallaire, who became a snowbird in 2019. This is one of my favorites. Now, Jesselyn didn't have parents who were involved in aviation, and when Jesselyn was age 8, there weren't as many outreach or organizations or events. But her aunt and uncle took her to one of the Girls Can Fly events hosted by various organizations, including COPA. And here's Jesselyn today at age 22. So here's her official photograph here, working for Sunwing. Notice she's a graduate of Waterloo Environmental Studies and my alma mater, as well as my alma mater in aviation, WWFC. And here's the unofficial photo, which is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm going to fly this. But more surprising, since we've seen more of a historical perspective, Zara Rutherford 3 years ago was age 19 and became the youngest woman to fly around the world. But listen, read what she has to say here. Growing up, I didn't see many female pilots or computer scientists, and that's this century. It's quite discouraging when there's no one you can relate to that does any of those things. I hope other girls see me and think I'd love to fly one day too. So, what was her secret? Well, her parents, of course, role models. Her mother is a lawyer, and her father is an ex-military pilot in Belgium. There are some notable achievements here. Susie and her daughter Donna at SkyWest, the Royal Brunei Airlines historic flight. It was the first all-female flight crew. You could see they are Muslim. They're wearing hijabs, but where did they send them? Saudi Arabia, where in 2016 women were not even allowed to drive cars. In Lebanon, first all-female entire flight crew, and then over here in Canada, Air Canada, now retired Captain Kathy Fraser. We call these unmanned flight crews. February 2024 was a good time to be called Zoe. So here's Zoe Cronenberg, who flew for the first time with Melissa Haney, and it was the first flight of 2 female Inuk pilots. Now, Melissa Haney made records when she started flying for Air Inuit in 2004. She was the only female Inuk pilot. Today, there are 4 female Inuit pilots, but still the percentage is very low. Also, that same month, February 2024, Zoe Williams flew with her father, Captain Orrit Williams, and he himself is, of course, a trailblazer since there weren't too many black pilots, male or female. Those Girls Can Fly. There was an aviation event in Oshawa in April. May 10th is Girls Can Fly at the Waterloo Wellington Airport. COPA will have an event coming up. And I'd wanted to start a scholarship for a few years. This is with the 99s, but it's not specific to the 99s. It's open to anyone, but I didn't know how to do it. So I approached my friend Robin Hadfield, also of the First Canadian Chapter 99s, and she worked me through the procedure. And about halfway through, she said, well, I'd like to contribute the same amount you are if that works for you. And I said, absolutely, because we're going to be helping young women between the ages of 21 and 35 to make a career change. Or so, for example, last year's scholarship, Judith St. Pierre, she used it to get a float rating, even though she was already flying Twin Otters. The first winner was Rebecca Van Snick, and then the next recipient was Mira Bissonouth, who is my co-lead actually for the Education and Outreach Committee of the First Canadian 99s. And tomorrow, this year's New Track Scholarship recipient will be notified. And one video, and then we're just about done.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vana Marceline Ihilatin. I am 6 years old. I live in OLV Bibingkan, Sorsogon City. Today, I will show you who I will become when I grow up. 。 . 。  . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. I would like to welcome you to the Lewis airline. The weather outside looks good. Please be sure you are seated and your seatbelt is fastened. Until then, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the flight. Thank you.
So I've traveled to about 65 countries, but not one of them is in the Philippines. So you might wonder, how did this little girl decide to get dressed like this, and why do I have the video? Well, in 2018, I summited Kilimanjaro, the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. And that was July 3rd. Now, her aunt, that is Vanna's aunt, summited the next day. We did not meet in Tanzania, but we came home and posting on Facebook, Instagram, we connected. And she told her niece in the Philippines, "Hey, I met a female pilot." And her niece was so inspired because her niece had wanted to become a pilot, but didn't know any pilots, didn't know any female pilots, and so she made this video. And I think it's pretty cute. Her parents did a great job with the audio effects as well. So just a bit about my book: a gripping memoir of resilience filled with moments of heartbreak and triumph, not just about flying, but about breaking free of societal expectations and navigating life on your own terms. In other words, going for it, doing what you want. Of course, I'm talking about flying, but there's so many other careers within the aviation field. So I want to thank you very much. And I'm so delighted to be here, Sharon and Abdo, and thank you everyone for who's been listening to this presentation.
Thank you so much, Lola. That was a very, very interesting presentation, and I think it was I would say the timing is very fitting that globally we would be celebrating International Women's Day on this upcoming Saturday. So your story is very inspiring, and I'm sure it will be very encouraging for lots and lots of young females who are interested in joining the aviation community, whether as a pilot or as any other related profession within aviation. So I just want to very quickly show this slide. I know that we do have a few people that mentioned that the chat function is not working well. I will go ahead and ask if you would like, if you have any questions, uh, if the chat functionality is not working for you on today's call. If you would like to share your questions by email, you can do so either at the email you see, copa@copanational.org, or at communications@copanational. If we do get it in time while we're still on the call, we would definitely love to ask the questions on your behalf. Lola, I know that you have a small portion of the book that you would like to offer us a reading on today's call.
I'd be happy to do that. Do we want to have a couple questions first, or shall I just get into the reading and then?
I'd love to
I
ask them some
I know
questions.
Sharon has
Okay.
had some questions, and I have a question, but Sharon, you go ahead.
Well, I can see in the chat where people are posting, they're saying this has been such an informative or fascinating presentation, and I completely agree. It adds to it that you're going through the history of women getting into flying with somewhat of a transatlantic voice. I don't know if you know that, Lola, but it's very soothing. I'm wondering, why do you think that in India the numbers are somewhat higher for female pilots? I'm bewildered myself, and I've done some digging. I have not come up with an answer.
Um, I'm pretty sure, first of all, nobody ever guesses it. If I were to ask that before I show that slide, nobody ever gets the answer. The answer, I do believe, is because, and it relates really specifically to the wealthy elite Indians, and I know this from friends who are Indian and Pakistani. Of course, that was all India before 1947. And their parents historically, let's say they have 4 kids, they will say, okay, Sharon, you're going to be a pilot. Hannah, you're going to be an engineer. James, you're going to be a doctor. And Susie, you're going to be an engineer. And they pay for the entire education, all 7 years, whatever it takes. And it doesn't matter if you never use that specifically, because you're going to be using it somehow. So my career trajectory, everything sort of meshed together, right? It just sort of flowed very organically in aviation, and then in when I moved down to Mexico, everything flowed very organically, and it worked. One thing I studied in Mexico, the reason I moved to Mexico was to live with the Maya of Mesoamerica, and I had studied anthropology. But when I took anthropology, never in my mind did I think I'm going to eventually move to Mexico and study the Maya. So the elite of Mexico, of India, stand by their children, they support the children, and they encourage them. So I think it's just the level of encouragement and dedication to their children, and the important, recognizing the importance of education.
Mm. Thank you. That's I hadn't thought about it in that way, but that level of wealth or family planning, the familial obligations and pressures do influence flying, and it does here in Canada, just in a different way. So that's really interesting.
Do also have a head start on us. In India, women have been flying professionally for major air carriers since 1964. In Canada and America was 1973, and there weren't very many women who were hired in 1973.
Now,
One in Canada.
I was just going to say, all of this digging you've been doing, have you been cataloging it over the years, or how have you been curating this information?
Oh, yeah, I take lots of notes. Yeah, I'm really interested in research, and I guess taking lots of notes. So my next book, so this book, Highway to the Sky, took me 10 years to write, but I didn't spend 10 years writing it. Soon after I started writing it, I thought, or trying to write it, I thought, well, this is way too hard. I need to take courses at university. So I then enrolled in a couple Gotham Writers, New York City, and then Wesleyan University, and then here in Canada at the University of Toronto, creative writing. But my next book, which is about the Maya, because I took so many notes, because it was a longitudinal ethnographic study, I've already got 35,000 words written in like a couple months.
I'm sure we have quite a few aspiring authors in the room, so hopefully we can come back and ask you questions on anybody who's interested in writing. But I do see a question in the chat. What's your best advice for young female pilots to transition between the training world and the professional pilot industry?
Be confident, believe in yourself, and find allies. And those allies may not be women. I mean, that seems to be what we would gravitate to sort of organically, but your best ally may not be the other woman on staff or the other woman at the flight school. My book opens with a woman who eventually became my student, but initially didn't want to fly with me because she, like some of the male pilots, thought I was just another pretty face, hired to be politically correct.
Thank you for saying that. I think I'd be remiss to not ask what your thoughts are of navigating the flying world today, where there's been occurrences and a lot of vitriol online as it relates to women who fly professionally. And the people who are in this call are here to support you as a member, but also are interested in hearing from female pilots. So what are your thoughts on how to navigate those really harmful rhetoric today?
Well, you have to be pretty courageous, that's for sure, but believe in yourself. You've trained you've trained, you've taken the same written exams, you've taken the same flight tests, and it's just one flight test. I mean, these allegations are so ridiculous because it's not like you've only taken one test. I mean, you're tested right from the student pilot test. And then as a commercial pilot, you're tested annually on every aircraft type that you're certified for, that you're going to be flying. You have to have a medical annually or every 6 months if you're over 40. And you're not just tested on takeoffs and landings, you're tested in the simulator for all kinds of flight emergencies that can happen. So you're frequently and consistently tested, and every flight is a test in itself. The allegations are just so ridiculous. But be courageous, believe in yourself, and just know that you belong there just as much as anybody else.
Thank you for that. I'm going to pass it back to Hannah, who's hosting this wonderful call. And I know you've got questions, and I see some other comments here in the chat that we can maybe bring to the attention of the viewers.
Yeah, well, even before I ask my question, we have a very nice comment from an Andre Probst. So it just says, "Hi Lola, it's great to see you again after 38 years. You certified my night rating in 1987 at WWFC. Congrats on your inspiring careers and excellent presentation today. And you're always welcome to visit our new ATB at Gorbey, the airport code CYZE. So
Thank you so much, Andre.
Yeah, that's a message from Andre. I'll go ahead and pose one more question, and I'm just mindful of the time. I just want to leave, maybe if it's only a few minutes for a very short reading. But Lola, I just want to say that throughout your presentation, we saw a lot of themes about having role models and a lot of inspiring stories of trailblazers. I don't know if you can speak a little bit to the importance of communities that share the same interest with you. So I know that you're a member of multiple associations and organizations such as COPA, the 99s, and others. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of having those communities as support systems as well?
That's incredibly important. When I was flying, the nearest female commercial pilot was about 800 miles away. So that's pretty tremendous. And in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, guess what? You could not pick this up and PM somebody or Facebook or FaceTime them. It just wasn't possible. So it was like being on your own. So to have a community where you can reach out, where you can send an email, where you can FaceTime, where you can get an almost immediate answer, or one even via email that is, 20 minutes later, it's so encouraging. Even though I like myself, I like being alone, it would have been really nice to have some of that camaraderie with other female pilots. And yes, certainly, I did meet with some of them. I talk about some of the, the events or the meetings that we did have, informally or going out for a drink, whatever. I talk about that in the book, but there was no one that you could um, hang out with normally. In fact, even I did my commercial flight test at Waterloo Wellington Flight Center. It was Flying Club then, with Maureen Weber, and I arranged to take my instructor rating with her. But when I arrived a month later, she'd moved on. So and I got a wonderful instructor, Chris Cole, who was a Mr. Chris Cole, but he was great. But it's still, had been so looking forward to working with Maureen, but that's about what it was like for most of my career. I worked with men who were great. For the most part, they were absolutely awesome. But yeah, find a nice peer group or peer anyone. The 99s, there's 154 chapters around the world. COPA, AOPA. There's so many organizations that can help you, even in the good times and in the bad times.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, and a couple of points you mentioned that your allies might not be in the exact same situation. So if you're an up-and-coming female pilot, your allies don't all have to be other female pilots in the same situation. the network and the community around you, whether it's a local COPA flight or whether it's members of your local flying club, it really does make a huge impact for people just starting in their journey. Now, I'm just mindful of the time. Officially, we have 3 minutes left, but if you'd like to give us, even if it's a little bit longer than 3 minutes, we would love to.
I'm happy. I know other people probably may have to leave, but sure, I'll do a quick reading here. So
All
this is
right.
my first solo. Um, and I turned toward the runway and mentally prepare to launch myself into the air. A gentle breath flutters the windsock, a silky cone of orange and white stripes. Cirrus clouds stretch like palomino manes across the azure sky. Pale gold sun, high in the late morning sky, spears the earth with summer heat. My heart thumps, flash of heat creeps across my skin, sweat tickles my burning cheeks. Glittering droplets of perspiration twinkle from the coal black control column. I scour the sky section by section, searching for aircraft without radios and therefore unable to report their arrival. Before moving onto the runway, I make a radio broadcast to warn radio-equipped pilots this is my first solo, and I hope my voice radiates confidence. I nudge the plane forward, moving in continuous motion from the narrow taxiway onto the 200-foot wide, mile-long asphalt runway, the black gash of civilization sliced through a conifer forest. I scan the runway, a gleaming oasis in the heat, and the area beside the runway for wandering moose. I look at my hand on the throttle, unable to believe this is me, checking the instruments, searching for conflicting aircraft, broadcasting over the radio, and taxiing onto the runway. This is the new me, transformed into someone different, someone about to prove her life has meaning. Part of me wants to turn back and cancel this flight, but I slide the throttle plunger toward the dashboard. The engine revs, and my brain hums with excitement and fear. The flying has taught me that fear is normal and that reasonable people should be fearful. When faced with a reason to fear, I've also learned that panic is abnormal and counterproductive. If an emergency occurs, I must not panic. I must rely on my minimal aviation experience. Inspired by the confidence of my instructor, I accelerate to full power. Without 200 pounds of male instructor weighing me down, the takeoff roll is much shorter than I expect. Seconds after acceleration, my 1,400-pound aircraft leaps into the air, screaming for the ultramarine beyond. I jump with surprise. The plane feels as light as a barnstormer's silk scarf. The airspeed is only 80 miles per hour, but it feels like I'm rocketing into space. Well, at least the lowest 4,000 feet of it. Memories of my childhood flood my conscious. I feel as exhilarated as 4-year-old me zooming down the hill sidewalk on my tricycle, a sparkling blue three-wheeled miracle. Unshackled from fettered footfall, nothing had electrified me more than gliding downhill, feet off the pedals, legs outstretched, in control. That is, until now, until flying, in control of an aircraft. My shoulders tingle with joy. Today's accomplishment is a landmark in my life, a sea change to define me and mold my idea of me and what I can achieve when I find the courage to believe in me. It's actually a lot longer than that, but given the time, I did land.
No, well, that's a very key component of the story. No, I really want to thank you. This was an amazing reading, albeit a short one, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. One thing that I did forget to mention when I was introducing you, that the book recently made it to the Amazon top 100 list of aviation books. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, I just wanted to take this chance to again thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your presentation, and for giving us a reading of the book. We did face some technical issues. Maybe not a lot of people were able to join in with questions and comments, but we do see some very positive feedback. Some members thanking you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
And I will say this will be a very a very high benchmark for future guest speakers. We've had a very interesting conversation with you, Lola, today. Thank you again for your time.
It's my pleasure. I don't know what your time frame is. I can stay for a few more minutes if we can somehow ask questions, and if not, I'm okay with that too.
We'll see if we can stream any more questions in the meantime. I definitely do have a few more. Um, Sharon, I feel like you had something.
I was just going to dig into the book writing part of it. Having a memoir that you wrote kind of conceptually over 10 years is challenging, and then deciding what to include in it is an even harder task. So
Absolutely.
how did you get there? What did you choose to keep, and what chapter is the most meaningful to you?
Uh, which ones to keep? It was actually relatively easy. Anything that makes the story move forward. So you do have to know what it is. What is the theme of the book? So, for example, I had a developmental editor who said to me, Lola, you're not writing about aviation. Like, wait, what do you mean I'm not writing about aviation? She said, no, you're writing about what it's like to want something that generally isn't that is not typical and is generally not encouraged for as a career for women. You're writing about women's issues, and so that actually added, no surprise, added clarity to what I was really writing about. When I first started writing, I included too much information about sort of not technical flying, but about learning how to fly. And what's really needed is the emotional aspect of how it affected me and how it will affect the reader, and why the reader would want to read this book. What's the takeaway? And the takeaway is, if you're motivated and determined, you can really fulfill your dreams and become successful. And the favorite chapter? I think the favorite chapter, um, hmm, maybe would be the last one. And, but they're all interesting for sure. Um, my favorite, maybe could you define favorite?
Not maybe not necessarily favorite, but one that's an integral chapter in your life that needed to be included in the memoir to move forward with the story. Obviously, getting your pilot's license is one is a big one.
That's definitely integral. Hmm. Well, I do talk obviously about my marriage that dissolved soon after we both got our pilot's license. Um, but I think that was certainly important. Um, I guess maybe stalled. I'm looking at the content stalled, and that's where I was stalled. It refers obviously to an aircraft stalling, but it also means to refer to me personally. And I was, getting a little bit concerned, a little bit scared. What did I want to do? I was terrified of the stall. I was terrified of the spin. And once I conquered those two, ideas, because they were ideas. I thought I was going to be scared, but in fact, I love spins and I love spiral dives. So once I conquered my fear of what I thought they were going to be, and the first stall and spin were pretty scary, but once I conquered my fears, it empowered me so much that I knew I could do anything that I set my mind to, barring, external limitations. And in my case, my eyesight. Otherwise, I'd say that was it. Chapter 10 would be stalled when I overcame my fear of fear.
That's a nice way to put it. I have one last question, if you don't mind, Hannah. I suspect there's some people in the room or on our call today that are just about to head into the airlines. And that means they have a lot of different opportunities and options available to them. And that can be overwhelming when you have 50 different lanes to go down. And you've done all kinds of unique flying yourself, Lola. So what advice do you have for those in the room who have a whole world in front of them to just choose that one lane and to be content with that decision or pivot if needed?
Well, make sure you're following your desire, not what other people think you should do. Don't listen to what other people think you should do in terms of negativity. Just go for it, and maybe it won't work out. Maybe it isn't for you. Maybe you'll hate that career or that particular career path, but there's so many avenues open that you can always change. You can always pivot. And maybe you can even do both. Some people fly commercially, but still, work as instructors or work as float and bush pilots. I mean, there are lots of opportunities. In fact, many of the airline pilots also fly small aircraft and like to teach floats and just general ab initio flying. There's also lots of other people who've started off as in one career an AME or flight attendant and decided that, like last year's recipient of the New Trek Scholarship, she thought she wanted to be a flight attendant, and then she realized when she got to know pilots that she could maybe fly. So then she changed. But all the information she learned and had to learn as a flight attendant is invaluable.
That sounds like a new track. Hannah, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm to know what your burning question is now.
Well, my question was more general, I would say. And this is something that we do hear a lot when we talk to pilots in the general aviation community. There seems to be a sense that, hey, the community is just a stepping stone for people who want to move on to commercial flying or move over to work with the airlines. And the general sentiment for people within the general aviation community is, oh, all of those people are deserting us to go to the commercial side. For you, Lola, I feel like you kind of have a foot in each one of those realms. So I wanted to get your own perspective on what does it feel like to on one side be a commercial pilot, having been an instructor as well, but also still being very much involved in the world of general aviation.
I did both. I flew for a regional air carrier and I continued to teach. It was very specific teaching. I certainly wasn't full time. I would teach instrument ratings and multi-engine ratings. And I enjoyed it. It was fun teaching and it was fun flying. Flying passengers isn't really that exciting. The airplane is really exciting, but flying passengers is it's more of a job, whereas flying a light aircraft is just a lot of fun. And if I could get money, that is, earn money while teaching and flying light aircraft, it was great.
Nice. So you got the best of both worlds, I would
I
say.
think so. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, perfect. So again, thank you for giving us a few extra minutes just to have a quick chat. I know time flew by real quick between the presentations, between the reading, and I'm glad that we could squeeze in a few questions as well. So again, thank you, Lola, for joining us. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us on the call. Please do keep in touch by email, through social media, and on our channel on YouTube, where you will find videos of previous seminars, other related content, as well as this webinar, which will be shared on there very soon.
Thank you very much. It's been my honor to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks so much, Lola. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.